Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Jason's Take On podcast with myself, Jason Noble, here in the UK, in London, a warm, muggy London without air conditioning. And say hello to my partner in crime, Jason Whitehead, in the States.
Hello, Jason.
We are super excited today to repay a favor. Casey and Todd from Brainstorm had myself and Jason on with them on their own podcast a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so back, talking about the challenges in the world of customer success today and some ideas around how it's going to change and grow. And I thought it was such a great conversation, and we realized that we've got a lot in common and how close our thinking was. I think they liked it as well because we've invited them to do it with us and they've come back, which is always a good sign. So we're hosting today, and we're going to talk about how you go about building commercially confident teams in business today, which I think is a really key topic. It's a lot broader than just customer success, and I think something that'll be really interesting to a lot of different audiences. Before we jump in, let me give a quick intro to my two new guests with us today. Firstly, Casey Trujillo. Casey's the VP of Strategic Partnerships at Brainstorm, where he leads all the collaborative, transformative innovatives with SaaS vendors, helping around onboarding for their customers. And I think it's all about, which is really big. And Jason, this aligns with a lot what you guys are doing at Success Chain, organizational behavioral change, adaptation, something that's not easy. And it's something that I've been in so many conversations this week where this whole challenge about how you get people to change what they're doing comes up. Your background, Case, is in sales. You've got a passion around how to really build vision, strategy to help customers thrive and drive in what they do. And you are a change management practitioner. And I think it's awesome. It really is such a key thing to do. And that how you help every organization make that change and help them use software that we've sold them, we want them to do. I think it's something that every single SaaS vendor has. In your spare time, you're a big runner. I was reading your bio the other day, the goal of a 5-minute mile. I'm like, whoa, that's miles away from me, but I'm very impressed. And my other guest today, Todd Kirk. Todd, you're the VP of Solution Advisory Services at Brainstorm, whether you're advising all of their customer-facing teams to how you address fully adopted enterprise software. So very similar, but again, it's a huge undertaking. It's something I don't think we do enough of today, but a big challenge that all of us have got. Your background, just as awesome as Casey's: product management, sales, project management, professional services, marketing, sorry, and teaching. And I think just that whole background and makeup really suits you for doing this. You guys have both been with Brainstorm for a few years. I think when I looked, it's 10 plus years. So you know what you're doing, but you're also the co-host of the one and only SaaS Therapy podcast, geared at customer facing teams in SaaS, a masterclass in really how do you drive SaaS customer connections and drive that. So I'm so excited. I will shut up now. I'll let you guys do a quick introduction and then we'll get right into this building commercially teams. Todd, I'll let you go first, sir.
I appreciate the intro, Jason. We had such a good time with you last time. I actually considered changing my name to Casey so that we could just be the Caseys. Y'all are a blast. We're super pumped to be here. And I'm excited for this conversation, mostly because I think that client success really struggles with understanding the business problem as a whole. And truth be told, anybody who works in any sort of knowledge worker type role or in technology is confident or is constantly trying to deal with how do they feel more confident, more capable in working with their team. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Casey.
Jason, I am equally just excited to be here. I think one of the things for me that I love about solving this challenge is I think it's a life challenge. One of the things I always say about myself is the Casey Trujillo of 48 should not be able to recognize himself when he's 49. And so I know I'm in the SaaS space and I'm helping people better adopt the technology tools. It's because it's designed to make you better. And you're the one that's ultimately responsible for making yourself better. So that's why I love this. It's something I put in practice at home, and it's something I put in practice in my work. And that's what I'm passionate about, is helping people become aware that there is so many more things that we could discover if we'll just open our mind and be curious about it. So Jason, we're excited to be here.
I love that. And I think it's a great kind of leeway into what we're talking about, because there's we're all selling, delivering, implementing B2B SaaS software, but how do we help our customers and the ultimate end users be better using that? And quite often it's not what we think. They might be doing something else with it. And I think when we go back to what we're going to talk about, this building commercially confident teams, that in itself is a challenge. Now, we've got the selling of the services and the solutions, but then how do you make sure customers themselves, you're asking the right questions? They know the commercial value, they understand value, they understand what the results are. I'd love to hear from you guys as to what have you seen in your conversations with the customers you're working. If we look to start with at customer success teams, what have you found useful, like pivotal in help driving that commercial confidence? Are there any specific programs, ideas that you've used? And are there any examples you can share?
Jason, I'm going to have a hot take right at the beginning. One of the leading online SaaS platforms designed to help you start up a business and sell your business is Shopify. And Shopify, every year, their C-level team has to reapply for their job. They have to show that they've expanded their abilities just as fast as their product has grown. Because if I'm not capable of becoming a better person in regards to, do I understand how to drive better business value now? Where is our product headed? Do I truly understand a return on investment? Am I developing myself as a C leader just as much as my product is being produced? I can't really help the organization. So my first hot take in being commercially ready is me as an individual. What have I done to increase my skill set to discover that for my customers? We can all complain that our product isn't being produced fast enough, or it's lacking in features, or our AI that we just released is horrible and terrible. We can all complain about these things, but at the end of the day, if I haven't improved my abilities, I'm limiting my ability to share that with my customers. So my first thing is do what's within your own power and work on you first. And as you work on you, you will start to see the opportunities to help your customers become better. But if I haven't bettered myself, I'm limited in the ways that I can help my customers. So that's where I would start, is with myself.
How do you scale that? You're one person in the team. You're absolutely right. But how do you then scale that so the rest of the team's doing the same thing?
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things is if you do not have some type of software that records your call. So a Gong, some type of software, your Teams does it, your Zoom does it, right? And sitting down and doing that mentoringship with leadership or just with a colleague to say, hey, let's look at talk time. Oh my gosh, I talked 80% of the time. The studies are there that should be about 50 to 51% of the time you should be talking. It should be 50-50. The best CS people, the best AE people, that's where they're at. They're at a 50% talk time. What was my questions like? Were there layered questions? Was I just the yes or no questions? When I said, okay, what are your big bets for this year? Okay, they tell me, what are the top 3 things that would keep you from hitting your big bet? That's how I start to discover cross-sell opportunities, upsell opportunities, right? But I have to go back and look at game film, right? And if I'm not looking at my game film, just if I did it by myself, if I did it with my colleagues, if I did it with my mentorship. So my first thing in scaling is find a time. Everybody holds way too many meetings. We all know this. So you have a meeting once a week where as an AE team or a CS team, implementation team, where you're looking at the data. How did we perform this week? Just take a call and just dissect it. See if you're actually getting to the goals and the visions that you have. That's the first thing. You have to inspect yourself to get to where you want to be. So that would be the scalable way I'd approach it right at the beginning.
I think it's so important, that, isn't it? And that kind of coaching and mentoring, it does start from within, but I think you also need the ability to do it on your team and someone to aspire to or help. A question for you, Todd. How can you coach and mentor? And if we focus on CSMs, can you coach and mentor them to be more commercially aware, commercially successful? And how do you go about doing that? As Casey said, I think services like Gong, that analytics on the calls are super, super important to do. Are there other ways that you've seen be successful in practice?
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned data, and tools like capturing information on a Gong call is amazing. But one of the things that was really fascinating back in my professional services days was I would always want to understand the feeling of a user after they went through coaching or after they went through training. And I've done that both in live settings where you're in person with a small group and at scale, because from a product perspective, we figured out at Brainstorm how to do that across thousands of customers in a scalable way. So one of the things that I did a few years ago is I did a macro study of about 2,000 different customers, probably about 50,000 end users. And what we did was we would train them on a specific topic. But at the start of the training, we would ask them what their confidence level was, essentially something to the effect of, I feel confident, strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. So you have a scale of 1 to 5. How confident do you feel? Then at the end of the training, we would ask them the same question. Now, what would you expect would happen if you trained someone and you ask them at the beginning how confident you are, and you ask them at the end how confident you are? What do you think the result would be of training? You would expect it to go up, right?
Would,
You
yeah.
would think that if I've trained you,
Absolutely.
yeah, you'd expect that the training confidence would go up. The more you train someone, the more confident
If
they're
I'm
going to
paying you.
Yeah. So here's the amazing thing of this study. Again, it was across 50,000 different end users across thousands of different companies. About 30% of the users who were surveyed at the beginning, at the end, actually reported their confidence level going down.
Wow.
Now, what's so funny about that is I remember when I told that to the teams that were responsible for training, their very first reaction was, we can't let that see the light of day. What are you telling me? If I'm going to teach someone their confidence level goes down? Like, that's horrible. But let's look at it a different way. Have you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? Are either of you familiar with that idea? Dunning and Kruger were psychologists who wanted to understand about confidence and what made someone confident. And what they were basically trying to study and measure was, why do some people basically present overconfidence? And the story is, you might always think that you're an amazing driver and everybody else is a terrible driver, right? If you take that as an analogy, that actually stemmed from.
Correct. No.
Yeah, exactly. The Jasons here we know are great drivers, and everybody else is a terrible driver. But it was funny. The reason they started this study was because of a guy who robbed a bank and rubbed lemon juice on his face, and thought that because he had lemon juice on his face, that it would obscure his face from the cameras. So he was totally caught and then dumbfounded that he was caught, because he believed that lemon juice was going to make him invisible and there would be no way that they'd be able to track him doing this robbery. So that was where this kind of started off. And it's launched decades of studies into this idea of overconfidence. Basically, the idea that if you know a little, you tend to overestimate your ability. Once you know a little, you think you're really smart. But as soon as you learn a little bit more, you all of a sudden realize how much you don't know. So the journey to confidence is a really important process, because we oftentimes start overestimating our knowledge. And once you teach someone and empower them, they all of a sudden become way more aware of their own shortcomings. And so the most expert people realize that the process is complicated, and their confidence comes because they have been exposed to so much difficulty and so much complexity in the process. So I think that's one of the first things from a data perspective that's really important to understand and try to grapple with. It's okay that you're likely going to go from a journey where you feel really confident, but you're actually underprepared, to not being confident because you realize there's so much you don't know, to finally having a true level of confidence where you really understand the big picture.
Jason, I'm going to hit this home with one other thing too.
Go for it.
So one of the things that we'll always do, so let's take, for example, we're working with a customer education team at a SaaS organization, and we'll say, outline what you do today. If I was a new customer and I was going to be onboarded and be educated about your software, what are all the things that would take place? And everybody puffs up their chest and they tell us about the amazing things that take place. Well, we have instructor-led training. We do it whenever they want, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. And then we send them to our product academy. Okay, fantastic. That sounds amazing. They walk me through everything, and everything looks beautiful. And they have these beautiful email templates and this beautiful academy. And then I say, okay, so what % of your licensed users go to your instructor-led training or to your academy? Less than 2%. Okay, so you have 1 million licensed users, and less than 2% are taking any advantage of your customer education or your onboarding that you're offering, right? Yes. What do you think about that? And they start to get uncomfortable, but we get trapped in not wanting to look at data like Todd's saying. We get trapped in not just actually seeing where we're actually at. What's my talk time? How many open-ended questions do I ask? How many people actually look at my customer education? How many people, and just look at the data and then ask yourself, okay, good, bad, how do we improve it? What are some things we can go test? People are so afraid of looking at the data just to see what it's saying and not trying to assume that it makes me look bad. It's just data, right? I think that's the first thing that we really need to get over. So I love Todd's example of that.
I think it's a fascinating, both of those, absolutely amazing, because it is you can use data to tell any story you want. You really can. And I think the more data there is now, but that I love Todd, when you were describing, does the training make you more confident? Before you said it, it made me think, and you think, actually, I know the answers are going to be no, it doesn't. But that again is self-awareness. And it's that willing to, I want to learn more. I want to know how to do this. And I think you comes into a lot of things thinking, yeah, I've seen a bit about this. I've seen a YouTube video, even seen a video on TikTok, even more so these days, I know how to do this. But then you realize that you're coming in, opening the front door, you know where the door is, but suddenly there's so much else you can do in there and you don't know where to look next. And I think part of that is it's fascinating. Where does confidence come from? It's not necessarily how much knowledge, but it's that self-awareness. It's knowing where your gaps are, where your strength is, what you need to do, what you can do, what you can't do, where you need help, that for me, it's fascinating this because it's not just about commercial confidence, but what does confidence really mean?
Yeah, for me, I actually, if you've heard of the marketing 4Ps, I have the confidence 4Ps. So I'm going to give you what my confidence 4Ps are. And funny enough, a couple of them are the same as the marketing 4Ps. So maybe it'd make it easy to remember. But when I think about confidence, it usually comes from one of four things. First is people. A lot of times, the reason you're confident is because you believe in your team. I'm confident because when I'm on a call with Casey Trujillo, I know he's got decades of sales experience and nothing's going to make him feel flabbergasted or knock him off his game and then have the whole thing fail on me. So the first piece of it is you have to have confidence in your team and your people. Relationships matter a lot, and building rapport with your team and understanding their capabilities will make a huge difference in your confidence. That's your first P, is people. The second one's process. And a lot of times the thing that will get in your way is the fact that you don't have a system that you feel like you can follow. And if you understand the process, that's going to make a big difference in your confidence level. The third one is product. So you have to believe that the thing you're selling is worth it and that it's going to matter. And actually, one of the things that I think really hurts CSMs is I oftentimes see CSMs say, it's my job to be on the same side as the table as the customer. So anytime they have a complaint, anytime they have a frustration, they actually take the customer side and say, oh yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I hate that about our product too. Oh, I can't stand it whenever this feature works this way. And so what ends up happening is they're actually reinforcing a negative belief in the product that they're selling. And as a result, that undermines their ability to build confidence. So that's your third one. And the last one, and this one I think is really important, and Casey alluded to this at the beginning, is prospects. So what I would say by prospects is, do you have the mindset and the belief that the future is bright? So your four things of confidence are, do you have confidence in your people? Do you have confidence in your process? Do you have confidence in your product? And do you see a bright future? Do you see prospects going in a positive light? So those are my four ways to say, how do you measure your level of confidence? And it actually gives you a framework, I think, to say, well, what is my deficit? What is the thing that's hurting me and preventing me from becoming more confident in my ability to succeed as a team?
Yeah, I love that too. And when I've worked with a lot of CS folks, especially junior people relatively early in their career, they may feel confident in the product, but they don't feel confident in their ability to lead the customer, especially around an upsell conversation. And at some point, often the term imposter syndrome comes up for them, and you're trying to gear them through that. And maybe we'll have one good conversation, they get a little bit of a light bulb, and then then they'll have a bad call with a customer, and then they're right back down to that unconfident trap where it wants to go. What are some things that you would recommend to someone who's early in their career that may be struggling with imposter syndrome, such as it is, or are not sure how to be confident in something other than the product? What are some things that they can do on their own, or maybe even that their managers or leaderships can do to really move people along that confidence continuum?
Yeah, I'll take that first. And then, Casey, I'd love to hear your thoughts here too. I think one of the things that's really challenging in the early days of your career is feeling like you have to prove yourself right away. And so it's the idea that you have no margin for error. And one of the things that I think will oftentimes create this almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you feel like everything's going to go wrong all the time is the fact that you tell yourself a story. Casey loves to talk about stories versus facts, and you end up telling yourself a story that's not true. You build up, you catastrophize, you think of as all of the different things that could go wrong and all the things that are going to get in your way, and that's what you end up focusing on. And what I think is really great is telling yourself a different story. The way you think impacts the way you feel, and the way you feel impacts the way that you behave. So ultimately, you have to start by telling yourself a different story. So I think that would be probably the first piece of advice I would say to someone who is new is if you are constantly getting the same result where you feel deflated and you feel discouraged, and that leads to bad interactions with your customers, you need to start by changing the way that you think and maybe tell yourself something different. It's okay to screw up on this call. It's okay if I don't say this perfectly in the email. I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to develop. And so it's all a mindset thing. And I think that's where my mind goes first is you have to learn how to change the way you think first. Casey, would you add anything to that?
Yeah. So I remember being on the phone with the vice president of Microsoft, and I did a pitch and I went through it. And at the end, I said, "Did that make sense?" And he said, "Not at all." And I had that gong recording and I played it for my team. I played it for my bosses. And I said, "What we're pitching isn't making sense."
Right.
I didn't take it as I wasn't making sense. It was the pitch didn't make any sense. So how are we going to solve for this? And I think as a leader, the first thing you need to do is you need to be the one that's always testing the messaging. If you said we're rolling out the playbook, unless you're over 100 million ARR, and even then I would still advise leadership, you be the first one to go on a call and do the new pitch. You do the new upsell. You do the new cross sell. You be a leader and show how it's done. And if it fails, you'll learn. If it's successful, you'll learn, but you take yourself out of the equation because what you've just done is open the door for your team to be able to do the same. As an individual, what I do, this sounds so simple, is we all know that questions help other people realize the value. It helps them discover their own blockers. So I would just start as simple as putting a sticky note on your laptop and have 3 layered questions. What are your top priorities for this year? Boom, boom. Could you rank those for me? Out of all the things you could have said, why was that your number one? What are the top 3 things that would make this successful? What are the top 3 things that would stop us from this? And I would just have those posted as a sticky note and ask everyone to do those same questions because that builds confidence. You're like, oh my gosh, the person talked on the other end. There wasn't silence. I wasn't nervous. Just putting a sticky note with here 4 layered questions will give you an extreme amount of confidence because you'll see that someone on the other end will actually talk to you if you'll ask questions and be curious. So number 1, as a leader, lead out, be the first one. Don't worry if you screw up. It's not hurting you with your team. It actually endears you to your team that you're willing to show that you will lead out, whether it was successful or not successful. And then as an individual, just do as simple as putting in those questions. So that would be the ones where I would start and building that confidence and getting out of that imposter syndrome is it's okay. It's okay no matter what happens.
I love that. Sorry, Jace. I love that. And I was going to ask earlier on, how do you, yes, there's a change as an individual you've got to make, but how do you do that? How do you empower someone to make that? And seeing a leader, seeing your boss do that same thing, I think is really important because it sets an example. It sets a bar for the team. And it also shows it's okay to fail. It's okay for it not to work. I want to see how you're doing it. And it helps you start building out a playbook as well. And I think the same with the questions. You have those. I'm a big fan of post-it notes. I use it on my Mac all the time. The ones, not physical ones, but electronic ones. But I have them, but I've got so many on my screen now. But again, that I think that in itself builds confidence because you can rehearse it, you can replay it, you can refine it, you can share them with your team, you can build out a team-based way of getting feedback, you can collaborate on them. And I think that really helps. So I think there's a really key element there as to how do you as an individual change? How can others help you? How does your leader become a mentor and coach and do it for the rest of the team? But then how do they also help scale those key commercial things as well? I think some really good insights there. Sorry, Jace, you were going to say.
Yeah. No, I was just going to build on Casey. I love what you were saying too about having silence out there and asking questions and then sitting back. And one of the things that I've worked on with some folks that has made a difference is getting them to be comfortable with silence and using it intentionally to move the customer to think about something differently, or to sometimes you want the customer to be a little bit uncomfortable. Through discomfort comes change, and using that strategically. And it takes people a while to incorporate that. I think there's a tendency for people to want to save each other, and that part of building this commercially confident team is getting them to say it's okay to be quiet and let the customer struggle a little bit. This is part of the process of getting the team through it.
Casey, what do you mean? One of the challenges we see is there's a lot of conversations still around, is customer success commercial? Is my team's commercial? How do you overcome some of the challenges, the barriers? If they say it breaks trust, we don't want to be commercial. We need someone else doing the upsell. I can't do that. How do you help the teams overcome those challenges? And I'm going to you first, Casey.
Yeah. And number one principle I live by is the right message at the wrong time is the wrong message. So being able to understand when I'm coming into a conversation and the person on the other end wants to talk about a particular issue, that's probably not the time for me to try to do a cross-sell or an upsell, even though it's in my playbook that this is the call I'm supposed to do it on, and that's what I had prepared and I had my agenda. Probably not the right thing to do. So that's the first thing I said is most people they get anxious because they feel like they have to deliver this message. My philosophy is cross-sells, upsells happen in natural ways, and just bring it up in natural conversation. This is fantastic. This is a company, they make a low-code platform. The customer education team was sick of always feeling like all they did is create education content. That's all they did. They weren't making an impact to the business. So very cool. The head of customer education went to the revenue leaders and said, we want to be part of revenue. How do we impact revenue? And they said, get us leads. So they took this philosophy of the right message at the wrong time is the wrong message, but the right message at the right time is the right message. So what they did is inside of their customer education, they said, okay, where do you want to start? Do you want to start building an application, or you want to learn the philosophy around an application? I want to build an application. Okay, so they start building. Then they just sprinkled in a question. Where do you want to publish this application? And then they had a list. And if they chose this one item as one of the lists where they wanted to make a publication, they knew that their customer would run into an issue. And they had another software application that could assist them in easing that. So if the customer said, I wanted to choose an application and I want to build it, and they got taught how to do it, then they said, yeah, I want to publish this and I want to publish it in this area. Then they asked the question, would you like some help with that? Naturally, because it was in a natural flow, I'd build my app. I want to publish my app. And now I'm running into issues. Yeah, I would like to learn a better way to do that. That's natural. And now all of a sudden they're generating customer education qualified leads. It's the same in CS. Take a natural process inside of a QBR or inside of a touch point and ask questions. And once you get to a point where you know they're going to run into some issues, that's where you possibly say, what are the ways that you're going to solve for that? And let them walk themselves through that and say, hey, we also have another way to do that. I think you'll like it because it's going to do X and X. In our next meeting, could I set up a time where we could walk you through that? But it needs to be in a natural way. So that's the first advice I always give to people.
That's great. And I love the question, do you want help with that? It's so easy and conversational. And I think for a lot of folks, especially folks that are uncomfortable with commercial conversation, that segues it out of being that perception of a sales conversation to a, I'm trying to help make your life easier and better. This is something I'd like to do. And I think for a lot of folks in CS, there's a natural draw to want to make other people better. There's a lot of people who have that emotional side where they're like, I want to do something for good. I don't want to be the stereotypical slimy used car salesman, which I don't think is really applicable as much anymore, but I think a lot of folks still have in their mind. So I think that's just a great, easy way for people to start.
The great thing is as well, that kind of question, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do with software. Even from a pure sale, we're not just selling it for sales sake. We're trying to help someone. And I think it does come to light. The title of the function we're in, customer success, that's what we're aiming for. So I'm not necessarily trying to sell this. I'm trying to drive value for my customer. And hey, if I can do something and sell you something that helps. So it goes back to that. It's a change in mindset. It's how can I help you be successful?
And it goes back to working on yourself. If I don't understand my product and I don't understand where this upsell opportunity actually has value, and again, I'm not trying to get in Todd's path. When we actually get into this scenario, I'm turning it over to Todd to dive into the product and everything we actually do. But I know why this new license has this new feature that's going to unlock this. And I know how it's better than what my competitors are doing or doing nothing. I understand enough of the concepts that I can have that type of question and conversation, right? And if I don't, then I'm like, you know what? I think there might be a better approach. Is it okay if I bring in one of my SMEs to walk through this with you? Just so you have the understanding, because again, you're making a big decision. You told me that the impact's going to be X. I want to make sure that you're making the right decision and that you're evaluating all of the different options. And I want to get the right person on the phone to help you, give you the best way to evaluate that. So I got to know more about the product so I can actually position that right and understand that correctly. So I have listening ears to hear where the opportunities are. And then I'm using and bringing in the right people that can actually give that type of information. And I always like to say, don't say they're going to come in and give you a sales pitch. They're going to help you evaluate the 3 or 4 options, because you told me that it's this option and this option. We're a 4th option. Cool. That's awesome. But it helps me come in and understand what are the other options that they're dealing with. That's natural. That's normal to say, what are the options you're considering and how you're going to approach this? We're going to think we're doing this, or we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Okay. Could I throw one more option now that you're considering that? Yeah, of course. No one's going to say no to that. They want to make the right choice. They want to go to the right option. So that's why just asking questions is always unlocks the benefits of upsells and cross sells. Always.
But
Well, and
sorry, go on, Jason.
yeah, one of the things that just to piggyback off of Casey's point there that I think is really important is that a lot of times I think when it comes to the commercial conversation and figuring out how to grow an account, a lot of times why I think CSMs feel uncomfortable is because they come from this mindset of reactivity. They're looking at, I'm there to provide support. I'm there to enable the customer and help them get the success out of the platform. But that means that they're waiting on the customer to get engaged and tell them what to do. And what's interesting is when I look at people who have been really successful in the client success space, they don't all usually, I've seen some people who are amazing client success managers who don't even come from a support or training background at all. They might come from a project management background or a coordination background or a marketing background. And what's interesting about that is the fact that most of those people who come from that mentality of project or coordination or marketing, they oftentimes are coming with a proactive attitude of how do I ensure that the customer is anticipating future results. In fact, that's probably one of the biggest mindset shifts that I think a CSM can make to feel more commercially successful with their customer is instead of trying to ensure that they have delivered on past results, they're thinking about and identifying and anticipating future results that the customer could receive. And most of the time, the customer may not have even realized that's an option because they're so focused on the thing they were originally sold or the thing that was their first priority. So being willing and able to anticipate and be proactive at helping the customer identify those future opportunities is something that I think most CSMs should feel really comfortable doing. Just going back to that point about how do you ask questions and how do you work through with the customer of seeing what the future could look like.
How do technology and tools and systems help us with this? I think a lot of this being proactive, predictive, you rely on data points. Does that come from other software and services? Are the different tools and technology you guys have used that you could see could help our teams be more commercially successful and more confident?
Yeah, so I'll use an example from the Brainstorm world, actually, that I think is really interesting. We have a customer who uses us really heavily to onboard because Brainstorm is a software adoption platform, right? So they use us to onboard their customers. And in that case, their initial result and the desire that they wanted to get from us was before we ever turn them over to CS, we have a really hard time getting customers to actually get implemented. And what ends up happening is we spend 8 weeks hounding them, hopping on multiple calls that are an hour long each time, and it ends up taking 6 months before they ever get implemented. What they did with Brainstorm is they figured out, okay, how much of this could we automate and actually reach out to the customer and have the customer go through their own onboarding and implementation through their own kind of self-paced discovery. And what they saw happen was 70% of their new customers were completely implemented without ever having to talk to a human. Whereas in the past, that was unheard of, right? And it's really incredible. Now, what was interesting about that process is with all their customers that they were running through that journey, they first noticed, okay, this is awesome. We're winning. We're saving tons of money and time, and customers are still getting a really good experience. In the journey along the way, just by happenstance, they decided, you know what we're going to do? We have a bunch of customers who are putting in support tickets. We're just going to put them through this same process just to see. And what's funny is that was not something they had been sold on. It was not something that was ever pitched to us. And we just found out by asking questions on a call one day. Basically, it was like, hey, we noticed you had a bunch of activity in there. Oh, yeah, we know. We thought we'd try this thing. Fast forward 6 months later, and about 90% of the accounts that they had reached out to engaged with the software and went in and also watched all of that training and consumed all of that learning. And it was just like a bonus. And I remember when we sat down with the CTO, he was over the moon because he just did this because they could and had no expectations. And now all of a sudden he looked like a brilliant genius. And so the first thing he wanted was give me all the data, give me all the insights, give me all the resources. And that means instead of just supporting from an onboarding perspective, now we can focus on optimizing and empowering their existing customer base. So it opened up additional avenues just because we had the data and the insight, and we could show them that this thing that was basically just an experiment, which I don't even know I would say it was an experiment. It was just more well, I guess we could, let's just do it. And it turned out to be amazing and opened up a bunch of additional doorways and avenues. So that's the reason why being able to dig into the data and interpreting the information of what's going on really makes a big difference in the long run of what you're able to present and showcase that idea of anticipated future value.
I think it's and there's a growing amount of data. Every interaction we do, there's multiple systems being able to get that value. And I think it comes from how do you automate the creation of that value from the data so that we can step in as humans and help those interactions when we need to. Guys, look, this conversation has gone exactly like the one we did with you guys. This could go on forever. It really could, and it's just so much fun. I think this is going to become a regular thing, or at least I'd like it to. This would be really cool. I think we could just, the four of us, just keep brainstorming ideas like this. I think it goes off in all sorts of different directions as well, which is brilliant. And that's what we want. It's a conversation. But before we wrap up, I want to give you our kind of one bold challenge question. And I'll ask you both. And if I go to you first, Casey, what's the one change that leaders in organizations, founders of organizations can do today? So one change that they can do today to help build confidence in their customer facing teams.
This would be my number one challenge. This would be my bold challenge. And it's scary for people, I understand. And when I was first starting my sales career, Spin Selling was the number one book. Right now, the number one book that everybody seems to be adhering to is the Challenger Sell. The Challenger Sell basically highlights CS people and says, you should be incredible sellers, because the best way to be a challenger is to have a great relationship. Jason, it would be crazy for me to go to my partner, my married partner, and say, would you mind watching the kids today? I don't want to inconvenience them. Oh my gosh, that would be so weird to ask them to do that. It's so funny that as a CS person, sometimes we don't want to ask our customer anything because, oh, that just doesn't seem natural. It just seems like I'm imposing on them. If you have a great relationship and you say you have an amazing relationship, the people I have the best relationships with help me out. And the people I have the best relationships call me out on the table and say, you know, what you're doing isn't working. And that's not you. The people I have the best relationships with are the people that challenge me the most. I want to give some confidence to people when I ask them for my bold challenge. I want in your next call, whether you're a leader, whether you're a CS person, whether you're in implementation, I don't care where you're at. If you're on a call with someone, I want you to bring up data. I don't care what data point you have. So I'm going to give the example. If I'm a CS person and I'm talking to a customer, I'm going to say, would you mind going to your dashboard where you see your product usage? Okay, let them navigate there. When they get to their dashboard to see their product usage, I want you to say, what stands out as you look at this data? And you stay silent until you hear something. If I'm an executive and I'm reporting to the board and I'm showing numbers, I want you to show data and I want you to ask them, as you look at this data, what stands out to you? You will be amazed at the responses you will get back. And it will help you find out where people are actually feeling, what are they seeing, and you'll know where to go from there. You'll know if you're commercially ready. Just ask the question, what stands out to you as you look at this data? And it's a gold mine. I guarantee you it's a gold mine.
I love that. I think you will. That could go in so many different directions, couldn't it? You've got individuals. What does this mean to me? That individual interpretation of it. You could unearth data that you've not seen before. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Todd, over to you. Same question, sir. What's the one change you'd make?
So I think one of the things that is so common with leaders is that they are unable to provide real feedback to their teams. And I think the one big radical change that I would make is if you are a leader, you have to understand that when someone is feeling a lack of confidence, you can't just immediately go into super positivity mode. And in fact, the thing that most people wish that their leaders would do more is give them real, honest, open, and constructive criticism. So the thing that I think you have to do is realize that if someone is in the trough of despair, feeling like they can't figure this out and they don't know what they're doing, you can't say, if the answer is, you got this, you can do it, I believe in you, or you are amazing and you are beautiful and you are wonderful and you are the best ever. They don't believe that yet. If you really want to help your team be successful, it goes back to Casey's whole point. Start with the data and start with the facts and then build from there. So there's a transition from living in negativity and toxic behavior that's detrimental to getting into this real belief and getting out of that. The hype traction model calls it the trough of disillusionment, right? So if you want to get out of that trough, you have to start with realism. And that is really key. And I don't mean being just focusing and living in the negative. It's recognizing and identifying where you are so that you can see where you want to go and then charting the path to it. So I think we tend to skip that middle step of the realism of where we are, and so that you can identify the direction of where you want to go and then give people a path to get there. So that I think is a place that if you are a CS leader and you have a team that you feel like doesn't really get it, let's focus on truly identifying where we are so we know where we need to go next, rather than just saying, look where we could go. We're doing it. We're living the dream, when we really aren't. And then everybody just feels like you're a big phony.
Guys,
that is excellent stuff.
I love it. Brilliant. Both of those. This has been such a good conversation. Look, before we go, we want to give you both opportunity for a shameless plug, either for yourselves, your organization, Brainstorm. Todd, I'll let you go first, sir.
Sure. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm not as good at posting all the time, but I love to connect with CS people, CS leader, customer education, anybody who supports a customer in the SaaS world. Casey and I run the SaaS Therapy podcast, where we really try to talk about the real, how it really is as best we can, and get into the weeds with people on what it's like. So we hope you check out our podcast. Come follow us on LinkedIn as well.
And you have some amazing guests on your podcast. I can attest to that.
Yes, I know.
Quick shameless plug, Jason, is if anybody out in the audience that you feel that you found a way to get people commercially ready, or you found a better way to onboard, or hey, this is an approach we need to take, reach out to us. We'd love to have you be a guest on our SaaS Therapy show. And that's what it's designed to be, is therapy for all of us as we're trying to make a change and make it better. So Jason's, thank you for letting us be on your podcast. This is awesome.
Yes, I think this is therapy. This is the kind of conversation that,
Yes.
and to your point earlier, my wife's gone out. She didn't ask. I am babysitting the kids, even though they're 18 and 15. She's just gone. She hasn't asked me.
I love it. And it's neat too, I love these types of conversations because they're so fun, and like I said, we love talking with anybody who's passionate about this. So we love having you, that you had us on today. So thanks, Jason.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been such a really good conversation, but really appreciate your time, both of you. Thanks, guys.